Father.
Oh shit.
Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector and this is The Broken Meeple, a show where I devote my time to ranting and raving about board games, but usually more the latter part. Today I'm going to do a speed review with as few spoilers as humanly possible for Divinus. This is from Lucky Duck Games and it's taken me a long time to get through this. I backed it on Kickstarter, got this chest of plenty, so it's got, recharge pack, the expansion in it, the base game and all that stuff, and I've been playing it with a group of friends. The problem is that with this group of friends, we can't meet up all the time. There's always things that get in the way. They got kids and everything. So it's taken a while to get through the whole campaign. Otherwise, I would have talked about this a lot sooner. But I wanted to finish it all in its base game form. I haven't touched the expansion before I gave any thoughts on it. So I'll do my best to avoid any kind of spoilers, but obviously I do need to tell you what my thoughts are on it. Without further ado, let's get cracking.
Oh shit.
Divinus at its core is a legacy game in which you will play 12 sessions. 12 exactly, no more, no less. And the idea is that the main mechanics will be constant throughout the experience, but little extra rules and things like that will be added to the process as you go through. Another game did this in a similar fashion called Charterstone from Stonemaier Games, where effectively it gave you a base Euro game and then it added extra rules onto it as you augmented the board. Well, here it's a similar process, except there's no board per se, it's more the tiles. The way it works in each particular scenario from a basic perspective is kind of like a weird sort of Carcassonne spin-off. You essentially have two stacks of these various tiles, and they've got mountain, water, and grass terrain, as well as some symbology for 3 different factions that appear in the game. The whole setting is kind of like an alternate version of, say, Norse and Persian mythology. And the idea is that during the game, you will have a bunch of these set out on a grid, and these grids are numbered from 1 to 12. You will roll dice in order to buy the tiles themselves. So let's ignore the fact these have got stickers on them. Let's just say that, I get a 1 here, I get a 2 on here, 5 and 6 on here. So I could look at these tiles, and if there's a 7 tile that looks particularly good for what I want, I could combine the 5 number here, I could combine a 2 on this die, put the 2 together, 7. I take the tile, dice go on the spot, and I place the tile in my grid, in which everybody is trying to build up a 4x4 grid of these tiles. You essentially still have to follow Carcassonne rules though, so the terrain has to match. There's no roads, there's no other weird little things you've got to connect like pathways or anything, it's just simply the terrain. Now, okay, so what's the point in just building up a 4x4 grid? What's the deal? Well, there is a story, per se, we'll get onto that, done via apps. So this is an app-controlled game. If you're not into apps, then you might want to stay away from this. But the app will direct you through a story, which you can read the text, and give you basic details on certain rulings for the scenario, usually quests that you have to complete, like, get your grid in a certain fashion, or, get a certain amount of symbols on your Carcassonne board, that kind of thing. But as you go through each game of the campaign, new rules are going to be added. And I won't go into too much detail about what those rules are, but essentially they'll add more things that you're able to do in each game in order to either score favour, which is effectively their victory points, or to satisfy quest objectives that you get. As you go through the dice, obviously you're going to run out of dice. You'll have to do a rest action to recharge, in which you'll get to re-roll them. There are what's called demigod actions, which are effectively kind of like bonus actions that you do. They cost dice, but as you go through the campaign, you'll get more and more demigod actions to do. But it's a case that you're rolling the dice, using them to buy the tiles, resting, rinse, repeat, until you have built your 4x4 grid. Once that is done, the game ends, and then via the app, you work out who's kind of won the scenario based on these god cards. You'll get, like, for example, 4, will be one, as in Lightning God 4. And the idea is that his god card might say, right, I'm going to reward people who build the biggest mountain that you can. And Persian one in opposition might say, well, I prefer if you get me a lot of different grassland zones. And so what will happen is that players will opt for whichever one they feel like going for, and at the end of the scenario, the app will work out you will input into the app, who has won based on those criteria, and effectively the two gods are clashing every time. So you've got like a Persian god clashing with a Norse god, and depending on who does best with their individual objective dictates which god won it. And this will basically have influences on the story as you go through, with certain gods, you know, being taken out of the game entirely and some coming back for revisits, that kind of thing. As you go through the campaign, you're going to get new things to put on your like boxes and dice, basically in the form of stickers. The most common ones, and this isn't really a spoiler, it's pretty self-evident, is you will be able to customize your dice with different stickers, which will change the values, give you more values, give you higher values. Like I could have a 12 on my die, I could have a 6/10, so I've got a bit of extra variety, that kind of thing. And you will also on your box have you know, some title spaces and some, you know, like relic spaces where if you earn the relic, it will give you some special ability that you're able to do as time goes on. Once each scenario is done, the app will instruct you on how to sort of bin certain components and you know, set up for the next scenario. You'll open the next box, the app will instruct you as to what's changed, take you through the story, and then you'll play out the scenario yet again, rinse and repeat for 12 total times. So certainly you're looking at this box and thinking it's a little bit on the gigantic side. Certainly, yes it is, although that is because I bought this with the expansion as well, and the expansion has extra miniatures that you use with it. It's a little bit more involved by the looks of it, and it's taking up like the bottom end of the box. You can buy the base set of this with no other flim-flam, nothing else, in a much smaller box and certainly in a much cheaper box, so you don't have to get this whole chest of plenty. You could just get the base campaign, play through that, see if you like it, and then get the expansion content later. Now, in terms of production quality, Lucky Duck Games is normally known for doing pretty well on their production quality. You know, things look good from a colourful perspective. I mean, it's a nice cover, you know, nice rule book. You know, the artwork on these tiles is very basic. I mean, it's just got to do basic terrain, but at least when you are building a grid, it's nice and pretty. If only I could say that the rest of the production quality matched Lucky Duck's typical regime, because I don't know what happened, but this game suffers from a major case of Kickstarter syndrome, as I call it. And I'm talking old days Kickstarter syndrome, where production quality was kind of like an afterthought, or like things weren't thought out very well, because a lot of stuff in this game is downright infuriating. You know, firstly, these stickers that you put on the dice, you know, you peel off the stickers and you put them on things like your box and on the tiles and stuff like that. They stick well to tiles. They stick well to a box. They are very hit and miss as to whether they stick well to your dice, particularly if you try to cover one sticker with another sticker. But there was a lot of times with the dice I had where I would try to put a sticker on and it would just slide about, it would just keep falling off. You know, the adhesive they use is really a bit dodgy. Like, it doesn't like warm temperatures in any regard or shape or form, and it just means that some stickers are going to stay on permanently and some of them are just going to fall off within seconds, and it got very frustrating, especially for someone like me who, as you can see, was harvesting quite a few of these stickers as time went on. And that was only after I got the actual dice I wanted. The game has had some issues with shipping with, you know, wrong components, and I was no stranger to that. The yellow player box wasn't even in my game. I had 2 copies of the green player, so I put in the request to ask for the yellow dice and the yellow box, but we had to get started with the game, and for over half the campaign I had to play this game with a set of green dice while my opponent also had a set of green dice. We had to keep tabs on whose dice was whose. Now you might think, well, okay, I mean, you played 6 games in what, like a 2-week period? No, this was 6 games we played over several months. It took a long time for Lucky Duck Games to mail me a box of yellow dice. Not great on the customer service front there, chaps, but at least you got it to me eventually. Although apparently the recharge pack I've got also has this problem. Thank you very much. But I digress, that's a side issue. But the rest of the production quality is still hit and miss. I mean, these tiles are fine, but I mean, the artwork is nothing to sneeze at. But the rulebook, wow. I mean, you know, the rulebook itself, you know, decent enough quality from a, you know, like how it feels and stuff. But whoever wrote this, seriously, oh my god, you know, you've got a lot of spaces to put like stickers on, and you add these new rules. It just became like an absolute slugfest trying to work out what certain things did. And it's not laid out in a particular, like, you know, easy fashion. So you're trying to think, well, I know, where do I reference this bit now? Is it in the middle? Is it at the back? Is it at the front? I'm not entirely sure, because there isn't a really good index to help you with this. But once you've got a bunch of these rules in here, this rulebook just gets more and more unwieldy. And for something that's only meant to be like 45 to 60 minutes playtime per game and a relatively simple experience, God blimey does this game like to make a pig's ear of it. And it just... there was a lot of times where I just felt like there was a lot of shortcuts being taken. And it even comes into play with the app. The app is very basic. You basically just get like a border with a wall of text for the story, and honestly, we'll now sort of meld into the story aspect. The story in this, who the hell cares? Who gives a crap? You know, the story in this is non-existent. I mean, it is a bare bones story that you could have written in English GCSE lesson. You know, there is no, really, gripping narrative or anything like that. It is as bare bones a plot as you can get for a game where you're basically just putting together a bunch of tiles, Carcassonne style each game. And so you get bored reading the story aspects, when you do like locations, that give you extra narrative and stuff. You forget what everything was because it's all done in bits. The main plot is done as it should do, but the ones that you find during the sessions, you might come back to them at a later game, but then you forget that was even a thing. It's like somebody basically just got one of those fruit pastel pick and mix bags or whatever, and basically said, right, well, here's the main plot here with this track here. Now just empty this pick and mix bags all over it, and there's the rest of the story. It's just all over the shop. But even then, it's not interesting. The end of the whole campaign, because you gain these titles that you put on your box to say, oh yeah, I won this, or I did this, it then goes through this whole listing saying what you did, and at that point I just really couldn't care. I was just done. The story isn't interesting enough, and it's not to say that every legacy game that I've played always has an interesting story. I mean, the pandemic stories are kind of bare bones themselves. Ticket to Ride Legacy doesn't even have a story. I mean, that's pretty bare bones, but I've played games like campaign games like Tainted Grail and that, where the narrative is some of the best novelizations I've ever I've ever read. And, compared to something like this, it's comparing like a famous author with a school child. It doesn't even compare. The box says 45 to 60 minutes. Honestly, that's fine for your first few games, but once you start adding in more of the extra bits and you're constantly having to read more of the narrative and that, you're going to the 60 to 90 minute mark easily for some of those later games. It's definitely one of those where you think, oh, can we actually get 2 of these games done in a night, or can we only do 1? And that hurts even more, because I would compare the legacy experience in this to something like comparing Disney Plus, Amazon Prime, and Netflix. Because Netflix gives you everything at once with a series. Amazon Prime tends to give it to you in batches, or gives you like the big premiere and then does 1 episode at a time, and Disney Plus just does 1 episode at a time all the time. This is done, if you play this like we had to, which was basically like a Disney Plus subscription, 1 episode at a time every now and again, it really does diminish the experience. This is something you need to binge, really. You need to just go through the campaign in quick time and get it done like you're watching Netflix. But if you try to space this one out, I don't think there's enough excitement to bring you back for another game, because when all's said and done, the new stuff that it adds isn't that interesting. It's just sub-variants of what you've seen before. Game 3, you get this new thing added. Alright, the quest card now wants you to do this. Game 8, you might get this other thing added, and it's like, well, how does that work? Well, you put these tokens on a card and then it resolves.
Right.
So yeah, kind of like the one we did earlier, right? Yeah, whoop-de-friggin-do. And I mentioned the Charterstone equivalent here. I had the same problem with Charterstone. Why that one didn't work for me. Because Charterstone gives you a very boring Euro game, and then just adds bits onto it to make it a little less boring. It's basically a Euro game, a fairly bland Euro game, being taught in 10 sessions or something. This is the same thing. What you get in the first 2 or 3 games is pretty bare bones. I mean, we're talking lesser than Carcassonne here in terms of what you get. And then it's just adding little bits on top, and then by the end you're like, okay, we have a subpar Euro game. Nothing particularly amazing. It's just, yay, it's now the same thing we've done for the last 10 games, but with a few extra bits on it. It's not interesting. Never feels epic. The narrative doesn't help on that front. You get to the final scenario and I don't feel like I'm in some epic battle of the ages like the narrative tries to make you think it is. No, it's just, yay, I will get tiles and I'll put them together. Yay, I've made my grid. Lovely. And I like tile laying games where you build a little map in that. I like Carcassonne. I like Small Islands and Isle of Skye in that. But they're small one-shot Euro games, you know, they're not legacy campaigns where it tries to rinse and repeat the same thing. You know, it's just this whole thing of legacy games, I think, has died. We need to step away from legacy games now. I mean, I hated Ticket to Ride Legacy. You can tell I'm not a huge fan of this one at this point, but you know, and even like the later Pandemic Season 0 wasn't that big on. I thought, it was alright, but it's lacking compared to the original one. I think that publishers got so obsessed with the whole legacy thing that they just thought, yeah, we just put the word legacy onto everything and it will sell. That does tend to be a little bit true in terms of marketing, but I think that the whole thing has now, the fad has kind of died. And we need to start moving away from legacy formats and thinking more like, I mean, if you want to do a campaign game, fine, but make it a campaign that deserves, a game that deserves to have a campaign, not, you know, My City with a little campaign or whatever. It's like, no, you know, make it a proper story game. But, you know, this whole legacy thing with a bare bones Euro game with legacy plastered onto it, I think that is starting to die out, and I think it needs to die a quick death. You know, we're kind of done. So, you know, can you refresh the game after you've done it? Yes, if you get the recharge packs. However, I discovered something rather nasty on that front. Where is my recharge pack? Well, oh yeah, it's over there. Well, let me get the one over here. So, this is the Shadows of Yggdrasil expansion pack. So, you know, if I want to recharge that campaign, you buy these and it lets you go through. In order to recharge the game, I need to go through this entire box and recover a load of the stuff that we binned in one of the Tartarus boxes, you know, so that we didn't need to use. I need to go through all these tiles and peel off every single sticker that was put on them. And then I need to assemble the boxes out of here with their respective cards and that. I need to peel everything off these dice. And because I don't have an extra yellow box because of their production quality messing me over to start with, I've had to stick little labels over this yellow box so I can use it again. Great. Am I going to have such fun doing that for the next 60 minutes of my day? You know, that's fantastic. But, you know, I need to if I want to, you know, put it in a state where someone else can use it. So, overall, is Divinus any good? Not really. I think this is a bit of a dud. You know, I enjoyed time with my friends. But this is the game that has basically made us sit down and go, you know what, we are done with campaign legacy games. And now when we meet up, we're just going to do one-shot games. You know, games that are done and dusted in a session and play something different. And for me, this has just basically killed my desire for anything legacy related. And I was already on the way out. But this has killed it because it's just not an interesting game. The actual main mechanic of the game will do you okay for about 2 or 3 sessions, and then it will be very rinse repeat. You know, the customization of dice is not that big a deal. You know, the fact that you get these titles that make your narrative a little bit different at the end, whatever. The narrative itself, the story is bare bones, you know, child friendly and not that interesting, and you know, you're paying all this money and having this massive box. You know, maybe the expansion's a lot better, I don't know, but I've no desire to play it because if it's just putting a grid of tiles together like we did before with some added bits on Charterstone tile, then what do I really care? There's just not enough excitement in here, particularly if you space it out. You really have got to Netflix binge this game and get each bit overdone quickly, because then it might be a little bit better, but at anywhere between 45 to 90 minutes per game, that's still going to take you a while to do 12 sessions of this. You know, literally the only main laugh this gave me was the very end. Remember I mentioned that it gives everybody kind of like a big sort of roster of all the story bits to do with the titles you earned? Well, basically 2 friends got a little bit each. My one was like War and Peace, because I ended up getting a lot of the titles. So basically I had this mammoth thing to read that I just could not be bothered to read. But we all cracked up hard, and I nearly spat out my tea when I read the friend next to me, who had literally the intro paragraph, and that was it. She hadn't managed to get any titles during the entire campaign because she was focused on other things, and we kind of stitched her up in that sort of regard. But I've never cracked up so hard at a game in my life when I read that, after reading all this stuff on the other players, and then just getting like what was equivalent to the participation award. And that was a great laugh from this game. But that was not the game being good that generated that laugh. That was us kind of mocking our friend. So, yeah, it kind of goes to show, really. But anybody who plays this, I mean, what is there? I just don't get what there is. It's bare bones. It will entertain younger people, maybe families who want their kids to be entertained by something. But even then, I think kids would get bored with this. You know, putting stickers on tiles and reading your little narrative. None of it ever feels exciting or cool. I never get a new unlock and go, oh yeah, that's great, yeah. I never open up a box for the next game we're playing and go, oh, we get to do this now. That sounds fantastic. It's like, no, it's all bare bones, which is then hindered by subpar production quality, really ambiguous written rules, FAQ moments aplenty. Yeah, it's a dud. This is going to be forgotten in great time. In fact, I'm pretty sure it already has been. I think because they made stuff like those Destinies games, which even then, if you check out my old review for Destinies, I thought wasn't that good either. I think people got hyped for this at first, but the hype very quickly died out when it took a while to fulfill. And nowadays, I don't think anybody cares about this game. That's how much it's died in the public eye. And yeah, I'm here to tell you that I can see why. For me, I'm giving this a 3 out of 10. There were some little bits of enjoyment here and there. There was some, it's a simple game rules-wise until you get further on in the campaign, but it's really bare bones and subpar. And I mean, I'm giving it a worse rating than the Ticket to Ride Legacy game, because even though I was more angry at the stuff that Ticket to Ride Legacy did, with the stuff that was really bad about that game, at least at the end of the day, I was playing Ticket to Ride, which is a fun game in itself, and when it's all done, I can still at least play the final map and go, well, this is at least a game of Ticket to Ride. I can't even do that with this, because there's no final thing for you to play. You've got to recharge it for another campaign, and even then, would you want to play a final version of this? I never wanted to play a final version of Charterstone. I seriously don't want to do it with this one. So, yeah, not really much of a speed review here, because this one is obviously a lot to talk about thoughts-wise, but hopefully that just gives you some idea. I didn't like it. I don't think a lot of people are going to either. If you really love this game, I would love to know what it is that got you excited, because I just cannot see it.
Bullshit.
So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube, thumb it up on Board Game Geek when it goes live on the page. Consider subscribing to the channel or subscribing to the Patreon if you want to help keep this channel running, because it is not my day job, it is a side hobby at the end of the day. Let me know your thoughts on this game if you have played it. However, if you are going to put comments about the game, make sure they are spoiler free. I do not want to spoil any more than this review has done, if it has spoiled anything at all, frankly, in the comments. So by all means, spoiler free. That is my golden rule. And until next time, regardless if you need to spend the next hour peeling off a bunch of stickers, it's still only a game, so I guess I better get started. Take care. Bye for now.